Welcome to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 76, the Brady Shea episode of the DFO Rundown. I'm Jason Gregor alongside Frank Saravalli. And once again, we have matching hoodies. Is this great? It's great.
We need to coordinate better.
So funny. Oh, we never even talk about it too. That's hilarious. You just come up and like, oh, we're wearing the same thing. But hey,
great.
That's all good. It's all good. So, although the colors look different on our cameras, which I find interesting. Speaking of interesting, Frank, hearing you know what, the NHLPA's got some interesting news potential here. Yeah,
it's going to be a fascinating Monday, and we don't want to dive too deep into it because we know that whatever we say now is going to change at some point today. And you may be listening to this on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever you dig into our Monday episode. But the point being, I believe that Don Fehr's days are numbered as the executive director of the NHLPA. And I say that for a number of reasons. One, the meeting that he held with the Edmonton Oilers players on Friday, I believe, was contentious.
Yes.
Players want answers. They want to know why the NHLPA and specifically Don Fehr, don't blame this on a systematic failure when it was presented to you twice by two different NHLPA certified agents, information about Brad Aldrich that allowed him to continue to operate and move freely throughout hockey circles as a serial sexual predator after sexually assaulting Kyle Beach, who was not an NHLPA member, but was on an NHL roster at the time of the incident. So players want answers, and Don Fehr doesn't have any. The answer that he's been giving everyone that he's talked to so far is, I don't have any recollection. That was in the report. There is an email that was presented in the report from an NHLPA certified agent who, as I reported on Friday, was listed in the report as a, quote, professional acquaintance. And, another agent was listed as a, quote, confidant. So if you read through those two words, these are people that should have Don Fehr's attention. They're not just random passerbys, even though if someone was presenting information like that, that should still be acted on. These are people that are regularly in contact with the PA, that there's no record at any point of Don Fehr taking those conversations any further. Now, I will add that the one caveat to all this is we still don't know for sure exactly what was presented, aside from what was in that email. What was said on those phone calls? How exactly was the incident between Brad Aldrich and Kyle Beach described? Was it in graphic terms? Was it simply just called an incident? It's hard to really, and this is the key point here, it's hard to hammer someone when you don't know exactly what they were told. But the fact that he doesn't have any recollection of, multiple different ways that this was presented is alarming. And it's alarming that it got past, all those different points, when he said quite clearly, at least in the report, I know people in USA Hockey, almost like I can help here. And then there's no record of a call or email or anything placed to USA Hockey to say, hey, Brad Aldrich is working with you and he's had these red flags pop up in the past. So where does all this take us? The NHLPA is holding an executive board call on Monday evening with all 32 player reps. And my understanding is his days are numbered because in addition to, the alarming nature of what's happened here, the players and other NHLPA staff are also saying, time's up. You had first mentioned the idea of instituting a succession plan back in 2014. It's 2021, about to be 22. There has never been talk of a succession plan. In the meantime, Don Fehr has collected $30+ million in salary from the NHLPA. And there has been he's 73 years old. He's gone through and has, brought the NHLPA through a bunch of wartime scenarios, a lockout in 12-13, extending the CBA in 18, going through a new one in 20. in the middle of a pandemic. We've now gotten to the other side and we're dealing with the next 5 to 6 years of labor peace. What's your plan? What's your exit strategy? You're 73 and can't continue on forever, but he doesn't have a contract, so he's serving at will of the PA players. So how does this situation, and I know I'm rambling on, how does this situation work itself out on the call? Well, you need a quorum of 20 player reps to be on the call in order for the meeting to actually take place. My understanding is that won't be an issue. At a certain point, if the players want to discuss amongst themselves the idea of either removing Don Fehr or having candid conversations about his job performance and his status moving forward, they can ask him to get off the call and they can have these discussions themselves, and they could then decide to have a vote and actually remove him by force with 18 yes votes. That's the number required in order to remove him with force. But the fact that Don Fehr called this meeting himself, understanding that the PA has been flooded with questions from players, understanding that the meeting with the Oilers players in person was contentious, he's now trying to get ahead of it and having this meeting to sort of put it all on the table. Now, I think the smart money would probably be on Don Fehr realizing that this is a toxic situation. No one's ever confused him with being a dumb guy. Resigning. And saying, look, I'm going to step down effective today, but because the NHLPA has continually been roiled in chaos when it comes to changing leadership, think back to all the different guys over the years that have gone out in a ball of fire, that he could stay on to help guide the search process until a new executive director is found, so that there still remains some kind of leadership. There's no politics and jockeying and everything else that goes on when that happens, with people trying to wrestle control of a pretty fragile union where players more often than not don't care. So that's sort of where things stand. It'd be fascinating to be on the call and see where things go. We'll have an answer at some point on Monday evening, I would imagine. But that's sort of the thinking as to the two different ways that this call could go.
Yeah, I had heard from a few sources that the meeting on Friday did not, and as it should be, there were some hard questions asked, Frank, and as you said, there wasn't any answers given. And I think that, from my understanding, is that was one of the more frustrating parts, was there wasn't a lot of answers to questions. And complacency might be the wrong word, but maybe I just feel like some players I've spoke to feel like it wasn't taken serious enough. And Kyle Beach was 20 years of age, and we talked about this before. The fact that he had the courage to even go tell somebody, and then not even the own players union helped him out. Like, never mind that, we all know the Blackhawks organization, the errors they made, and people paid the price. But for the PA to do nothing when it was presented to him, that to me, I think concerns the players even more, because they feel like the Players Association should be caring about us more than the actual team. So I think that's why there's a big thing going on here. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But
it's multi-layered, to your point. Yes. It's not just about the Kyle Beach thing. It's also like, time's up.
Yes. Well, there hasn't been anything new. Like I've long argued that, the PA is one where, Frank, you said there's some that don't care. And I think that's probably fair and accurate. And I hope that would change, because, they could present themselves a lot better in certain areas. And I wonder if they will have more players who want to get really involved moving forward.
I'd be shocked. I mean, that's just not the history of the Players Association. They care about really three things: salary, insurance, and pension. And if those three things are taken care of to a level that they believe are proper and fine, then they don't really bother with anything else, especially throughout the season. It's such a short career, such a short time to make hay and make your money, that players don't want to be spending precious hours and time during their season, which is already, short enough as it is, to really be digging in on these issues on their off days and things like that. So it's hard to get players to buy in and actually really, take the bull by the horns here and be more involved. And unfortunately, that leads itself to complacency, where you see a long tenure like this, and not to, go too deep down the rabbit hole on Don Fehr and exactly what's gone on throughout his entire tenure. But we're approaching 12 years now. 11 years in a month from now. So that's a long time for any one person to be in charge, let alone someone that's now 73, that people are wondering, what exactly do you do when there's not a CBA negotiation going on?
Yeah, fair question. We do have Ken Holland coming up. He's going into the Hockey Hall of Fame later this month. And we pre-taped this with Ken a few days ago, and we'll air that a little bit later on. But first, let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk for fill in the blanks. And oh, look, 3 for 3 hoodie day. Woo!
Yeah, we really do have to coordinate that a little bit better. Or maybe we don't. Maybe us, happily wearing the same hoodies. It's good camaraderie, good teammate, right?
Like a bunch of dorks.
Nothing wrong with that. It's like we're going to a prep school or something. We're all dressed the same.
It's brought to you by DoorDash, proud sponsor of the Nation network of podcasts. Restaurants and more delivered right to your door. Use the promo code RundownDD. Gets you 25% off your first order and no delivery fees on that order as well. Fill in the blank. I got 4 lined up for you guys. I want to start with the Arizona Coyotes. If anyone watches the live show we do every day, I love the fact that the Arizona Coyotes are losing because it's making me money. But they're 0-8-1 to start the year. The question is, the Arizona Coyotes will win blank games this year. How many for the Yotes by the time they get to 82, Jason?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I'm going to say 18.
Oof.
18. Whoa. They've already played 11% of the season.
Yeah.
So that means that they need to win 18 out of the next 70, 1 out of every 5.
They'd have to win 18 out of the next 73. Yeah. I mean, you'd think eventually, like they're professional hockey players. Yeah, eventually, they're going to rattle off a couple, right?
No, they're not. They're going to pretend that's 1 out of every 4 they're winning.
Yeah. Keep in mind, Frank, remember Colorado in 2017? They were horrific, right? They did 40. They still won 22 games.
No, this team makes that Colorado team look like the Harlem Globetrotters.
All right.
I'm telling you, I was doing the math on this last night. They're on pace for like 9 points through the first 11 games of the season.
Hey, Frank, you hate that. You hate it when the people say 11% guys on pace for 50.
Yeah, no, I do hate that. But in this case, this is historically awful.
So what are you picking?
I think they win on sub 10. I think they win 9 games.
This is like the Washington Capitals of 1976.
They're that bad.
Okay.
And here's the thing. As I mentioned, there's no cavalry coming. There's no reinforcements. They're going to start plucking guys off this roster. Hey, Phil Kessel. Hey, Clayton Keller. Beat it. Like that. They're trading these guys. They're not keeping these guys and building for the future. They're trying to get as many draft picks as possible. They're trying to ensure that they get 20% or as close to it as they can in the draft lottery.
Yeah. It was actually the 75 Caps. They had 8. The 76 had 11 wins.
Oh, yeah,
honestly, I think they finished with 9 wins.
9 wins.
Wow.
Okay.
18 is a ton. That team is not winning 1 out of their next 4 for the rest of the way.
I'm writing these down. I'm writing them down. All right. Carolina Hurricanes, they're the opposite of bad. They're the final team without a loss or an OT loss in the NHL at 8-0. Coming up this week for the Canes, they got Chicago on Wednesday. They're in Chicago Wednesday, in Florida Saturday, and then next Tuesday they're in Tampa. The Carolina Hurricanes will lose their first game blank. Frank?
I'm going to say in Tampa. So what does that get to? 10-0?
Yeah, 10-0 and all the way to next Tuesday.
That would tie the NHL record. Buffalo and Toronto.
Remember that there was that one Blackhawks team, and I got to find the year. I think it was the lockout.
That was the lockout year. Yeah. Points in 27 straight or whatever.
That was banana. Like I remember sitting there being like, that team finished 36-7-5, which is insane. Yeah, I think this Hurricanes team, I don't know if they're that good, but they're really good. Yeah, I think they start 10-0.
I'm going to say 9 because they're going to lose to Florida.
There you go. How about in Alberta here, where the Oilers and Flames are both off to tremendous starts, only 3 losses if you include OT losses combined between the two sides here. The most impressive Alberta team so far this year is blank. Jason?
It's a good question. Well, the Oilers beat the Flames. So the Flames won 5 in a row on the road, man. Calgary to me is more surprising. I don't know if they're better. They're more surprising. Jacob Markstrom's being good. So, but I'd still go with the Oilers. Their power play is 47%. They've scored 11 power play goals. Anaheim scored 11 power play goals all of last season. So when your power play is 47.8%, like it's ridiculous. So I would go with that, but by the slimmest of margins. The Battle of Alberta, for the first time since 1990, when those teams finished first and second in their division, they could actually be good at the same time, which would be refreshing, because it's 30 years. There's so many young generation of fans who've never even seen both teams good at the same time.
The better team is the Oilers, and has been the better team. With all due respect to Calgary, and we love the goals, Lindholm and Mangiapane are each shooting 35%. Wholly unsustainable, Batman. Like, they'd be thrilled if their season shooting percentage ends up being 1/3 of what it is at this very moment. Off to incredible starts. Markstrom has been fantastic, .957. That to me is the best stat going for Calgary, is how good Markstrom has been so far. If he gets back to that level that he was at 2 seasons ago, that team's an easy playoff team. Yeah. Goaltending solves so many issues. They can't continue scoring like they have with Lindholm and Mangiapane, but I think the inverse is true with the Oilers in that power play. Maybe not exactly at 47%, but I had, one of my bold predictions for the year is that the Oilers are going to set the new NHL record for power play conversion percentage. We'll see if they can chase the NHL record for number of power play goals in a season. They've been sort of historically clicking in that 31, 32% range the last 2-3 seasons. And I think it's even better this year than it was previously. So that actually is much closer to sustainable than anything the Flames have done so far.
Wow. And the last one, and this is the big one. A lot of rumblings over the weekend, but Jack Eichel will be dealt by blank. Frank? Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot with this one.
By next July. I mean, that's the only answer. Like,
what?
To me,
what are you giving, like 8 months here?
Yeah, it's a cop-out, but it's not really, because what I'm telling you is I just don't know that it's going to happen.
Really?
So you're saying...
I'm saying that as much as... Okay, so, I reported on Saturday and got everyone riled up saying that the Vegas Golden Knights are well down the track in having these conversations. And I said, will it get done? And I gave the shrug emoji, and people were all over me saying, oh, thanks for the non-update. And I'm like, well, to this point, no one has really publicly said which teams are really far involved. They've said, well, this team is interested, blah, blah, blah. Like, so, okay. So if you don't want me to lay that part out there, fine, I won't. There were lots of rumblings, even going back a week ago, that a deal to Vegas was, quote, imminent. Obviously, it hasn't happened. There's a lot of complicating factors, and it's not just Eichel's injury, which is obviously a big one. It's also Vegas and their cap concerns. They don't know if Stone can come back soon. Is he going to be out long-term? Is he out the entire season? Putting this cap picture together and puzzle together is insane for the Golden Knights in order to pull something like this off. It basically needs to be dollars in and dollars out, but it actually needs to be that way on both sides if that were to happen, because Buffalo also needs to remain above the floor, and they're just barely above it now with Eichel on it. So, there's all sorts of moving parts to this. Plus, then there's the Calgary component and other teams that are involved. And then, oh yeah, by the way, at the end of it, you've got Jack Eichel and his camp saying his situation health-wise is getting worse. We need a resolution very, very, very soon, was the quote that I received. So, I mean, do they just throw their hands up and say, okay, we're grieving this, we've got no other way to do it? And then if they grieve it, good luck. It really is going to become like July.
Yeah, my question here is, Dustin Byfuglien went and got his surgery on his own. He just went and did it, right? And I know that led to them and the Jets not being happy. But what if Eichel says, you know what, I'm just going to get this surgery done now. I'm sick of waiting. Like, what happens here?
They have the option to then void his contract.
Buffalo could void it.
$50 million.
Yeah, but if they void his contract, then they're going to lose him for nothing. They're not going to do that. Are they?
Would he be a UFA at that point?
Would you,
if they void his contract, he would
be. If you were him though, wouldn't you just be like, okay, I need the $50 million more than I need my neck fixed?
But wouldn't he get that? Wouldn't he get close to 50 million on the open market again?
I totally think he would.
I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't pay him. I would need a first sort of 1 year sort of prove it. And then I'd need, what would the contract then look like after that?
Yeah. Well, either way, I think he'd get his. I'd be surprised if he didn't get his money back. But I guess the legality part's interesting. It just seems, there's so many different doctors'
Taylor
opinions
Hall
on
is the
this.
example of once you get knocked down a peg, and there are questions about Jack Eichel and his attitude too. You never make that money back. Like, I think one of Taylor Hall's biggest mistakes, and I know he didn't necessarily want to be in New Jersey, but there was a massive $80 million offer on the table in New Jersey a number of years back. I mean, look at how much he's given up since then.
Yeah, but it all comes down again when you've got his Hall prior to his new contract that already made $60 million. Like in his life, he says, "Do I, if I could stay in New Jersey, and if you felt like they weren't,
that's not what the point is. The point is, if he walks from the 50 and he only ends up making 20, yes, he already made 30 in the first 3 years of the deal, but is that worth it?
Depends if he's happier.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, how many million do you need to live? I can't answer that question.
Yeah, well, depends how much you spend, Frank. But I'm going to ask you, I'll say this. I think Jack Eichel will be traded before Christmas.
There we go. And that wraps up another stirring rendition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by DoorDash.
It is a fascinating one because it's rare to see a player like this, one of the elite players. He's definitely a top 10 center in the National Hockey League. And when healthy, he'd help a lot of teams. And the other thing, Frank, is, and you know what? Everyone's like, well, we're waiting for Buffalo to slow down. The Sabres are now. I know they kind of blew it against the Kings yesterday. They're up 2-1 and gave up that lead. But the Sabres play hard, right? Like they are much more competitive because at the start of the season, most people thought they'd compete with Arizona. Well,
Sabres, Columbus, way better than New Jersey's been really good.
So I give Don Granato a lot of credit and Buffalo because I don't think anybody had them above 31st. Or 32nd this year, right? I don't think anybody picked them higher than that. So they've been a big surprise early on. And you know what? They're just more competitive. I don't think they're going to finish second in their division. I don't think that's where they're going to go, but it's been a good start for them. Now let's get to our big guest today, brought to you by ESPN+. ESPN Plus has become the must-have for hockey fans. Get access to more than 1,000 out-of-market NHL games, 75 weekly national games, plus stream thousands of live events from the best leagues and the biggest tournaments in the world, exclusive originals, the complete ESPN 30 for 30 library, premium articles, fantasy tools, and much more with ESPN Plus. You can go there, easy, sign up at espnplus.com/DFO. And I know Frank was talking earlier about, you and your son, you got all the games going on. Like if you're in the United States, ESPN Plus it's your home.
It's the only way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to get it. So now we'll get to Ken Holland.
Our next guest has his name engraved on the Stanley Cup 4 times. He's held a variety of different roles throughout his career in the National Hockey League, including goaltending coach, director of amateur scouting, assistant general manager before becoming the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings in 1997. He's now celebrating his silver anniversary, 25 consecutive seasons as an NHL GM, and he'll be inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame as part of the class of 2020 in November. Ken Holland, welcome to the DFO Rundown. How are you?
Good. Nice to be with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I got to ask about the wait and what this has been like for you. You find out 16 months ago, even voted in during the pandemic, but it's taken this long to get this induction ceremony and weekend together. What's, even knowing you're going in and all that comes with that exciting weekend, what's it been like waiting?
Well, I'm anxious to obviously get to the induction, but I guess it's taken me a lifetime, take all of us a lifetime, all inductees to get a lifetime. So, we want to have some, family and friends there to support us. Times are difficult for everybody. So it's been certainly anxious to get to the induction night. But certainly under the circumstances, understand the delay.
Mm-hmm. Ken, anyone that knows you knows you're a worker, you're a grinder, you're a competitor, you want to win. But aside from the winning, what gets Ken Holland out of bed in the morning as you're building your team? What part about the game really drives you? Is it the scouting part? I'm sure it's probably not the salary cap and dealing with all that stuff, but is it the people part? Like what really drives you as a manager?
Frank, I think it's the same for everybody. If you find a passion, and I've got a passion for hockey. I love hockey. I could talk hockey. I've been playing minor hockey in Vernon, BC. And if I wasn't playing hockey, I was playing road hockey and pretending I was my hero. So, it's not work. It's something that I love to do. And then obviously when you get involved in professional hockey, the goal is, like, as you said, is to win. And then, there's different sets of winning. You want to win to, make the playoffs. And there was a time in 1985 in Detroit, we had the number 1 overall pick and took Joe Murphy. We were rebuilding. We were trying to win enough to win some fans back, and then, win enough to make the playoffs. And then some major disappointments in the first round early in the 90s, and, made some moves. So you're always, trying to strive where your team's at to take it to another level. So I think the word is passion. I think most people, all the people that are in this industry, we have the passion every day to get up. We're doing something that we absolutely love. It's a game. It's a challenge. There's so many passionate fans, for each marketplace that drives the interest. And certainly ultimately, I've been lucky 4 times to be part of a Stanley Cup winning championship. The goal is to try to do it one more time.
Now, Ken, last week you became only the 5th GM in NHL history to win 1,000 games. You've been a GM for 1,821 games. You got 1,002 wins. Like David Poyle and Lou Lamoriello and Glenn Sather and Harry Sinden and Ken Holland. What do you make of that group?
Jason, it's funny because actually the first person that told me about it was you. I think I was sitting at an airport and you texted me and you said, congratulations on 1,000 wins. And or 1,000, and I wasn't sure. So you and I exchanged a couple of texts, and then I found over the course of the next few minutes that I had reached 1,000 regular season wins. It's kind of mind-boggling personally to think that the game's been around a long time, and I'm the 5th winningest general manager in the history of this great league. And I think back. I was 1997, got hired by Mike and Marian Ilitch. Jim Devellano recommended that they hire me as the general manager. And most managers start out at the bottom, Jason. I started out with taking over a team that won the Stanley Cup. I'd been the assistant manager in 97 when we won the cup, and so I took over one of the top teams in the National Hockey League. So and some great players: Yzerman, Lidstrom, the Russian 5, Shanahan, Fedorov. So one season turns into another, and you're worried every year about building a team and winning. And fortunate that the Ilitches kept me around for 22 years, and fortunate that Daryl Cates and Bob Nicholson gave me another opportunity, and all of a sudden you hit this milestone. So I certainly feel very proud of the accomplishment. There's so many people that have helped make it happen. It's when you're a manager, it's about a lot of people, not about one person. But certainly feel very proud of the accomplishment, but know that there's many people that help make this happen.
Now, Frank had outlined, you started out as a goalie coach and then worked your way up into different roles. Then you become the GM, and the old adage, the buck stops here, and somebody has to make the final decision. When you look back now on 25 years, Ken, did Jim Devellano, did anybody give you good GMing advice, or was it just all kind of learning as you went?
There's a number of people. My Hockey Hall of Fame speech, certainly I've got to thank a number of people. But I would say to you, I played 9 years of pro, Jason, and then started out as a scout with Neil Smith, and then for 4 years, Neil kind of taught me the scouting, what to look for. We had lots of conversations. It's trial and error. You make some picks, you like some people, and whether you pick those players or not, you watch how they go, and you kind of, as you go along, you get different ideas on what you want to do. But basically, 1994 to 1997, I was the assistant general manager in Detroit, and I got to work every day with Scotty Bowman and Jim Devellano. And for me, that was going to Hockey Harvard. To listen, to talk to those guys on an everyday basis. They're thinking about the team. Scotty was the coach. Jim Devellano was the senior vice president. That was my real, like I said, Harvard. Going to university and learning the professional hockey business about, team building, negotiating contracts, how to deal with people, building relationships, everything that goes into being a general manager.
Ken, was the Hall of Fame ever on your radar? Like, I'm sure people had asked you or mentioned it at a certain point, but what was it like getting the call that you were going in, and your emotions when you found out that you were?
Well, no, the Hall of Fame was never on my radar. Lanny McDonald called me one day last late June. I think I hadn't really thought about the Hall of Fame. I sort of knowing that they were going to announce a new class, but I hadn't really thought about it. And I was sitting in my office at my house in Vernon, BC, and this number rang. I think it was a 403 number, and I don't have the number in, so I wasn't sure if I should answer it or not. And I thought, well, I'll answer it. And then Lanny was on the other end of the line. And as soon as I heard Lanny's, and I kind of put two and two together in a hurry, and felt that Lanny was calling me about the Hall of Fame, and obviously a surreal conversation. My mind immediately went to a whole lot of different emotions, elation, but also all the people that helped make it happen. And then after Lanny said to me, Ken, you got 30 minutes. Tell whoever you want to tell. Don't tell anybody, but it's confidential for 30 minutes. So I went out and I told my wife. We called our 4 kids, each one of our 4 kids, and then shortly thereafter it became public. So when I got the call from Lanny, it was I can't even describe the words. You're going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Never thought about ever in my life going into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and to get that call was just surreal.
Yeah, what an awesome moment that is. So you get the call, and you are, I guess, finishing your first season with the Oilers at that point, but so much of your life and your career has been spent in Detroit as a member of the Red Wings. Was there at any point when you were making the transition, and I know you've mentioned Vernon, BC a couple times, and a proud BC guy and being a Western Canadian, but was there at any point that, it kind of hit you making the transition from one club to the other, just about how weird it was? Like, I'm sure, all the Red Wings gear in your closet and all the different things that you have accumulated over the years. A lot of it's Detroit, to then switch over and be seeing and being around a new team.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been a Red Wing for 36 years, and at the press conference when I was there with Daryl Cates and Bob Nicholson, and had the Oilers logo behind me, over the next day or so, I had lots of people text me and thought that I looked kind of strange, with the Oilers logo behind me. But great ownership in Daryl Cates, and I've known Bob Nicholson for a long time. He's a Penticton boy, which is he grew up just down the road, 90 miles down the road south of me. I've worked with Bob at the with the Canadian Olympic team and the Canadian men's world. So I've got a relationship with Bob that goes way back. So I feel very, very fortunate to get another opportunity that they believed that I could come in and help make the team better. But certainly the first few days was a little bit strange. I'd get into meetings and I'm supposed to be talking about the Oilers or Bakersfield. I'd say Red Wings or Grand Rapids, but in short order, I made the switch over, and I'm an Oiler and Western Canadian boy, proud to have an opportunity to manage a Western Canadian team, and that's got a great fan base.
Ken, when you look at one of your first things was to try to, I guess, patch things up with the Esa Puljujarvi, and you obviously hadn't been there when he had struggled in the organization. Weren't on the same page. If Ken Holland's, if this happens in 1997 or 98 when you're a young GM, are you as patient with Puljujarvi's camp as you were when you were in Edmonton? Like, did you learn patience as a GM in 25 years?
Jason, the answer is yes. I can tell you a story. I remember becoming the manager in 1997. And one of the first things I did was I traded the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Mike Vernon, away to San Jose because we had a young Chris Osgood. Today, I tell him, get out there and you're both on the team. We're strong in net, and you guys figure it out. So certainly by being a manager for 25 years, you learn things as you go. And I think patience is one of them. You try to, whether if your team's down, hang in there. Don't overreact. The National Hockey League 82-game season is a roller coaster ride, and then if you're fortunate enough to get into a playoff series, the 7-game series is an emotional roller coaster ride. So absolutely the 25 years of general managing, affects the way the decision making that I make now.
How much has it changed? Because you mentioned you took over a team at the top, and also at a time when you had an owner who was willing to spend. There was no salary cap, and you guys, now just because you spent, the Rangers spent a lot and they didn't win, but the salary cap came in. How much did that change your approach as a GM? And you've been in the salary cap era now for 15 years, more in pre-salary cap. But how different was it as a GM? Was it a challenge? Whereas before you could just go out and you could almost sign or trade for any player because you didn't have to worry about money.
You know what, Jason? One of the things that I'm really proud of was in 2005 when the salary cap came in. We bought out, I think Darren McCarty, Ray Whitney, Darian Hatcher. We had to kind of go our pro scouts, Mark Howe. We went out and we found guys like, Dan Cleary and brought back Chris Osgood. And I think we had 126 points, the first year of the salary cap world. Lost in the first round to Edmonton. I think we made the playoffs 10 consecutive years in the salary cap era. We were the last team to miss the playoffs in the salary cap era. So, I feel proud that we were able to make that adjustment, we had a $70 million payroll in 2003-04 and, had to find a way with a $39 million payroll to be competitive. And we had 126 points and won the President's Trophy. So, it was a credit to the job that Mark Howe and our pro scouts did in kind of, beating the bushes and trying to find some players that were looking for an opportunity. And we found 4 or 5 players that came in, and I'd mentioned Dan Cleary, and there was Chris Osgood, and there was 3 or 4 others, Michael Samuelson, and certainly having Nick Lidstrom, and that was really the beginning of Zetterberg and Datsuk. Yzerman retired in 05-06, and Zetterberg and Datsuk grabbed the team and carried the team for another decade. So the salary cap is great for the game, Jason. If you're a fan of a franchise, there's a high and a low, a max cap and a minimum cap, and I think it's got to give all fans of their own team the belief that their team can be competitive. Certainly, prior to 2005, it was probably 6 or 8 teams that could win the cup. All the high-priced, high payroll teams, Dallas, Detroit, Colorado, Philadelphia, the Rangers, Toronto. There was 2 or 3 others, and then there was a big drop. But so it's a wonderful system now for competitive balance.
When you look at it now, Ken, and you talk about that competitive balance and building out those players, I do want to ask you, Detroit for the longest time, you guys had great success in bringing over players from Europe. But I know you've talked about, obviously you get a little bit lucky, because if you thought Datsuk was that good, you wouldn't have waited to take him that late in the draft. But what was with the success? What were you guys doing differently in the late 90s and early 2000s, bringing over the Europeans and finding these, talented guys in 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds that became legit NHL players?
I think our philosophy had a little bit to do with it. First off, you have to go off to the scouts. Joe McDonnell, Jim Nill, and Håkan Anderson, and all the scouts with them. They're the guys that are going out and watching games. We were looking for skill, and I think that prior to maybe 05, there was lots of teams, in the later rounds were looking for, what I would call the one-dimensional players, that the guys that were on the roster that could fight. Scotty Bowman, I certainly learned that from Scotty. Scotty liked to have 4 lines so deep. They all played. You have to have some team toughness. I remember hiring Mike Babcock in 2005, and we had the same conversation. And I said, Mike, we can have the #1 power play in the National Hockey League. That's going to be part of our toughness. So, part of it would be philosophy. Part of it would be the job that the scouts did. And then I think the other thing is when your team is good, Jason, we were able to leave our players in leagues, where they were having success. We didn't have to rush them and race them to the National Hockey League. And I think about Henrik Zetterberg, who was, we drafted him in the 6th or 7th round. I think he was the Rookie of the Year of the Swedish Elite League. We left him back for another year, and I think he was the only player on Team Sweden in the Olympics in Salt Lake City in 2002 that was playing over in over in Europe. Every other team player on Team Sweden was in the National Hockey League. So, we had an NHL player playing in the Swedish Elite League. And I think he won the MVP that year, and then we brought him over. So, we could have patience with the players. We weren't under pressure to put those players in the lineup until they were able to come in and take somebody's job and contribute.
I know these two guys were a big draw in terms of your reason for wanting to ultimately come to Edmonton, but what's it like managing a team with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl? I'd imagine as exciting it is, that also comes with some pretty big responsibility in terms of finding the supporting cast necessary to put a competitive and consistently winning team on the ice. And as you're sitting in the press box watching these guys, like everyone else is on a night-to-night basis, does your jaw still hit the floor like some of us do when you're watching it?
Yeah, Frank, I've been fortunate to manage and watch a lot of great players in my 25 years as manager. Nobody's like Connor. Nobody that I've seen is, and yes, I mean, he does, after being in the press box, my eye is sort of trained that, the NHL superstars look like this. And, Connor, and I'm sure there might be one or two others, but Connor can do things that, other people can't do. I mean, and then on top of that, it's his drive, his passion, his determination. And then, having Leon as well, one guy's 24, one 25, they're both in their prime. Leon can play center, Leon can play left wing, big, strong guy. I mean, he can one-time the puck as good as anybody in the National Hockey League. Having those two guys, 1-2 on our team, and Darnell Nurse made a massive step last year. So that's the core of the team. Great players, but not only great talent. Competitors, proud, committed year-round, determined, passionate. All the intangibles that are needed to drive not only themselves but to kind of drive the team. So to watch Connor play every night and Leon play every night, certainly I feel very, very blessed because they are such incredible players and do things that like you said, make your jaw drop a lot.
Mm-hmm. Last question for me, Ken. I have no doubt that Connor will be joining you there someday. I say it all the time, he could, and you don't want to hear this part, but he wouldn't have to play another game in the NHL and he'd automatically go to the Hall of Fame. But what's it like going in with this class? People that you've spent time rubbing elbows with throughout your career. One of your contemporaries in Doug Wilson, the two of you, two of the longest serving GMs in the game. You had a chance to bring in Marian Hossa in his career. You saw Jarome Iginla play for a long time. And then to now spend and enjoy this weekend, Kevin Lowe, your experience with him in Edmonton as well. You've been around these people for a long time to also now share the same experience with them coming up in November.
Yeah, and I feel incredibly honored. You just went through them. I mean, Doug and I go way, way back. We've both been sitting in the general manager's chair a long, long time in those GM meetings and have developed a real bond and a friendship. And Kevin Lowe and I were together, I think in 2010 at the Olympics, and known Kevin for a long time. And Marian Hossa obviously was a Red Wing for a year, and I'm looking forward to really getting to know over the Hall of Fame weekend Kim St. Fehr. And I watched Jarome Iginla. I mean, great scorer, great player, great fierce competitor. We played Calgary in the playoffs, I think, in 2000. One year they beat us, and one year we beat them. So we had a real good rivalry with Calgary, and I saw Jarome up close. So really honored to go in with this class. It's a great class of people, great. They've had incredible career accomplishments, and looking forward to spending a few days with them over the Hall of Fame weekend in Toronto in the middle of November.
Ken, before we always like to end with rapid fire, but I got one more on the Oilers group. And, your team obviously got off to a good start. Now you look kind of bigger picture for your team. And, the trade deadline, you've talked about it before. If you feel like your team can win, you want to make some additions. How do you balance trading? Because you got a lot of young defensemen in the system. They all can't play. There's not enough room for all of them at once. at the time where you would trade prospects, or is it still picks? Is there a better option for you when you think about the deadline?
Well, I hope I hope I can be as optimistic as you. You've got us in a buyer mode already, and we're only 6 games in. So I hope you're right. First order of business, obviously, is to win enough games and get at the trade deadline, and basically feel like we're comfortably in the playoffs, and you can start to think about what you want to, what little tinkering additions you want to do to add. But certainly, my history has been in Detroit when we were in our prime. I was aggressive. 2 years ago, I tried to be aggressive my first year here. But the players rewarded, myself and the coach, and it played at a high level. We traded, quite a few draft picks away to bring in some players that didn't work out. But over the last couple of years, we've had some young players develop. Like you said, we have lots of good young defensemen in Bakersfield. That's where I am right now. I'm going to watch Bakersfield here play this weekend a couple of times. I want to really be up to speed on what's going on down here with these young players. But if we play ourselves into a position here at the trade deadline, my history has been that I'll be aggressive, and there's got to be a fit. There's got to be something out there, a player that you think you want. And but I paid the price in the past, and at the right time I'll do it again.
All right, Ken, we always like to finish with rapid fire. The only rule is you have to answer all the questions. Okay, so here we go. We'll start. You got your Hall of Fame speech, and it was delayed. How many times have you edited your Hall of Fame speech?
I'm only 3 or 4 times right now, but actually today I put one together. I'm going to send it off to somebody to get back. So here the next 10 days, I've got myself under pressure, but I've kind of got the basics. So 3 or 4 times, but I know there's a bunch more coming here in the next 10 days.
Are you going to memorize it or read it?
Oh, I think I'm going to have to read it, because I think if I start to memorize, I get off script, I might embarrass myself.
Okay. Yourself, Doug Wilson, and Kevin Lowe, they're going in as players, builders, but those guys have been GMs. Jerome McGinley and Marian Hossa. Which one do you think would be a better GM in the future?
Well, that's a great question. You know what? I think they both have. The biggest thing is I used passion. I think both of those players were smart, intelligent players. The biggest thing I think is if when you become a manager, obviously it's a big time commitment. But both of those people, both those gentlemen, were smart, intelligent players. I think that if given an opportunity and spent some time with some experienced people, could be good managers.
Now, you started out as scouting. You said you've loved scouting. If we had to rewind, what would be your scouting report on Ken Holland, the goalie?
Small, doesn't take up enough space. He's a battler, handled the puck pretty well, but not consistent enough, prone to the soft goal.
All right, that's pretty honest scouting report. When you started scouting, when you look back in your career, was there 1 or 2 players that you ended up really going to bat for that you really liked, that panned out, that you were pretty proud of, to say, you know what, that one worked out. My scouting was accurate to what they became?
Probably the one that I had the biggest impact on would be Chris Osgood. I was in Medicine Hat, Alberta. I became chief scout in '89, and Chris played for the Medicine Hat Tigers. I was a former goaltender. So I was kind of on my own there a little bit. When it comes to goalies, for the most part, the staff, because they thought I knew. I'm not sure if I did know or I didn't know, but they thought I knew because I played goal. So he won 325 games in a Red Wing uniform. He won, I think, over 401 or 403 games in his career. So probably Chris Osgood, just because he's a goalie. We're both from Medicine Hat, and for a long time I used to call him my fifth child there. He was around our house so much there in Medicine Hat when I lived there from 1985 to 1995.
You talk about scouting reports, and you said there's things Connor McDavid does that no one else does. Dominic Hasek came in, and the way he played goal was unlike anyone else. What was your initial maybe scouting report? Do you remember scouting Hasek before he came to the NHL, and then even when he came there?
I didn't scout him a lot, but I remember watching him when he first came over, and I thought he was really like unorthodox, and he did things way differently than everybody else. So your first assumption is, well, there's no chance he can be successful over here because he's way different than everybody else. And as it turned out, that's what made him great. He was way different than everybody else, and if you thought he was going to do something, he did something else, and he'd do a poke check, or he'd do a 2-pad slide, or he'd be standing up. But at the end of the day, spending time around him, he was an incredibly competitive goaltender. He did not want any pucks behind him in practice, and he practiced like he played, and that's what drove him to, in my opinion, to be one of the greatest goaltenders of all time.
Now, Ken, remember, you have to answer this question. It's rapid fire.
Oh, rapid fire.
Yeah, you have been a GM for 25 years. Which GM did you find was the toughest to negotiate a trade with?
Glenn Sather would be up there, probably the top.
Why?
I remember one time we were in a golf cart. I was like I just become manager, and we went to the GM meetings. It was just the GM meetings back then were like a week before the trade deadline, and I couldn't understand why I was playing in the same cart with slats. And we played golf for about 14, 15 holes, and it was really, really cordial. And I thought he wanted to get to know me. And then about the last 3 holes, he dropped his bomb on me, and he had some ideas to make my team better. And I thought, boy, he's not helping me. I think he's helping Glenn Sather. So I learned early on that certainly Glenn's got a reputation around the league as being one of the greatest managers in the history of the game, and he was a shrewd negotiator of contracts and of trades. And I right off the bat, my first, like I said, it was my first or second year as a manager, I got a taste from how he works.
And in that note, how did you balance to be fair as a GM while also wanting to win the trade? Is there a balance in that? Being a GM, do you have to be conniving a little bit?
I think now that, Jason, I think, the staffs are way bigger now. You think back 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, it was, general manager, assistant general manager, and 5 or 6 scouts, and there was no, there wasn't as much information. So, now there's 15 amateur scouts, and there's 5 or 6 pro scouts, and there's more people involved. So I think that you're doing a deal now that works for both teams. And the other thing I would say to you, Jason, some teams are trying to win the depends if you're a buyer, where your team's at, or you're in rebuild mode, or you're trying to take a run at a long playoff run.
Well, Ken, we really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's super busy. We apologize to your wife for taking you away from dinner with her. And congratulations on having to wait a little bit longer, but I'm sure it'll be just as sweet when you go into the Hockey Hall of Fame in November.
Thanks, guys. I'm very humbled and very excited for that weekend.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Frank.
That was Ken Holland going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Pretty good class with Ginla and Wilson and Kim St. Pierre and Kevin Lowe and Marian Hossa. It's a star-studded crop, Frank.
At long last, too. I mean, I feel for these guys and gal, being told you're going in sort of in the middle of the pandemic and then it just being postponed. It's, so unique. No class of 2021 either. When you look at the historic Hockey Hall of Fame membership roll, years, decades, a century from now, there'll be that 1 year, 2021, where there was no class that goes in. So this is going to be, 2 years worth of celebration that comes out later this month. And we're all excited for that. And it's going to be fascinating just to see the emotion that goes into a different setting, Meridian Hall, as opposed to, just another building in downtown Toronto where they normally do it. And geez, I'm looking forward to it. Hall of Fame is always a special night and weekend.
Oh, it's huge for them, and good that they get to have it with all their family and friends in attendance. That'll make it a little bit more special, and we'll have a few more Hall of Famers coming up on the pod later this month. Frank, we will be watching the Don Fehr news later today, and we will
One more thing. Gary Bettman is holding a media availability as well today, NHL commissioner. And I find it fascinating, Jay, that he's going to be the first person answering questions. You know, that's the one thing you think about. The Blackhawks, their owners, Stan Bowman, Joel Quenneville, everyone, Kevin Cheveldayoff, Gary Bettman, Don Fehr, everyone that's been involved in this process and has been scrutinized has not faced any questions to this point.
Yeah. Other than Kern Hawks, right? That John,
which is in a lot of ways unfair.
Yes.
The fact that you're leaving the players to take bullets when they're not in any position of power.
Yeah, 100%.
Not absolved totally, as we've talked about, but not in a position of power.
Yes, totally agree. So it'll be
Today's
interesting
the first time.
to see how that goes. Have a good one, Frank. We will talk to you on Friday.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Seravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.